Hello, good day everyone. My name is Debbie Vanessa Negriño and I am here to report or present about the principles of ecocriticism. Ecocriticism is a name that implies more ecological literacy than its advocates now possess, unless they know what an embattled course ecology has run during its history. So, ecocriticism is an umbrella term under which a variety of approaches fall. Ecocriticism is the study of the relationship between the literature and the physical environment. Eco and critic both derive from the Greek oikos and kritis, and in tandem they mean the house judge, which may surprise many lovers of green outdoor writing. So the oikos is nature, a place where Edward Hogan calls our widest home. And the kritos is an arbiter of taste who wants the house kept in a good order, no boots or dishes thrown about to ruin the original decor. So, simply that ecocriticism, it gives importance to the relationship between human beings and nature, and how are human beings affecting nature and vice versa.
So hello, I am Rodel Sorban and I will continue the discussion. So we are here in ecology and ethics. So what does this mean? Ecology and ethics are those studies of what humans individually and corporately ought to value, ought to be, and ought to do in relationship with all other beings and elements in the biosphere. A topical agenda of ecological ethics is formed by contemporary environmental problems. So these environmental problems include climate change, multiple forms of pollutions, human-induced losses in biodiversity, and other environmental problems. Ecology is a science strongly connected to a history of verbal expression. In the medicine rites of early people, shamans sang, chanted, and danced stories to heal diseases or prevent disasters. So the shamans or the early people thought that these diseases or disasters affected and causes an imbalance in the nature. So this was their main reasons why they were doing ritual medication. Ancient science was dyadic because it portrayed nature as a composite form of opposite elements. Lucretius reasoned that matter and process are inseparable, with all substances that made by the action that either join or sunder. So these substances were rocks, water, and grain. Descartes' rationalism then further exaggerated that split, yet for centuries the natural descriptive science remained bound to words of local, vernacular origin. The biological names of species were quite haphazard until Carolus Linnaeus compiled Systema Naturae. Systema Naturae is a treatise that used Latin inflections to classify organisms into a categorical taxonomy or naming system. Darwin's theory of evolution took Linnaean taxonomy. This evolution undergoes three concurrent phases which are heredity, mutation, and natural selection. Heredity is what passes to offspring, mutations is what offspring may alter, and natural selections is what all generations must do to survive and adapt to circumstance. Gregor Mendel then charted its syntax with genetics, the code of reproduction. By this time, Western nations were experiencing both rapid industrial growth and environmental loss. One historian sees that shift as dialectal, from Arcadian to imperialist phases culture, for ecology appeared when naturalists began to write about the detrimental impact of mass societies. Henry D. Thoreau traced the effect of woodlots in forest succession in 1860, and in 1864, George Perkins Marsh published Man and Nature. Man and Nature is a study of erosion produced by land clearance and overgrazing.
Good morning. I am Brenda Aprenia. I assigned to be report the part of ecology and ethics. Ecology by Ernest Haeckel in 1869. An autogony recapitulate of polygamy has summarized modern organized life and repeat a species history. Ecology inflicted the Lenin term on natural economy, Worcester in 1985. From economia to ecologia, house mastery to house study, a shift that changed species from resource into partner of a shared domain. The ecology thus observed Lenin taxonomy, quantified Darwinian evolution, and revolution Mendelian genetics, creating what amounts to a vernacular and democratic science. Ecology became an accepted lingua franca not in Europe but on the fertile, level plains of mid-America. Passage of the Morrill Land Grant Act in 1869 gave large tracts to Midwestern states for endowing agriculture and mechanical colleges. The founding paper in Modern Ecology in 1887 and 1899 were by the scientists from Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan who studied glacial lakes and downs, those recovery zones where plants and animals rapidly from successional communities real. Rapid settlement and spoiled of American land after 1900 spurred the rise of resource conservation, forestry, and fishery. As ecological concept of association, climax and nature arose to describe the biomass of eastern forest and western grasslands. Several ecologists wrote history of regional land use, linking biography to agronomy and sociology to examine natural and cultural interaction on Malin. Through social discourse, ecology also defined ethical principle, as in Rachel Carson's landmark work, Silent Spring in 1962, which arose a sense of consequence about pesticides that poison groundwater and destroy the biodiversity. Ecology advanced from description to advocacy after 1960, as its stories presented ethical choices that affected land and people. Just as telescopes and satellite photographs provide new maps of the Earth, or that's called capes or whole, so did ecology study shape a new ethics in landscape history. In the 20th century, the American story is of limits reached and strained at time of sobering recognition that human growth can destroy natural resources, but those losses also awoke a new sense of land and the intricate relation it supports.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rehana and Gamora now, and this afternoon I want to discuss about language criticism. What is the language criticism? The language criticism is linguistic of criticism is probably the oldest form of the biblical criticism or textual. Criticism developed is released and heavily upon the study and knowledge of the biblical language. The language criticism is classic of the discipline are substantious of new approach and will dismiss them as flame-shy. Flame-shy, perhaps the greatest obstacle to acceptance is that much privileged basis professors and literate who praise an innovation but hint to preserve the status quo. We will have the example of language of criticism. Literate criticism is in these ways. Number one is it helps me understand too what is the essential about the text. Number 2 is allow us to see the relationship between the authors, readers, and text. Number 3 is enhance the enjoyment of our reading of the literary work. The language criticism is literary. Tourists will recharge and incorrect as insufficiently problematic of their interests do not really match current ideological functions. Ecology leads us to recognize that life, speak, common truth, included streams of information that have a direction and purpose. If you will learn to translate the message in the message with finality to see. The finality to see is how for these values dwell from pure humanism. We may term a modern language association guide redrawing the boundaries. Very recently work of article theory chart boundaries for Frontiers and Horizon magazine margins, but this stroke also have a natural graphical reference.
Good day everyone, I am Nahara Abdulatif, and for today's topic, I will be continue what Rayhana's report. Cultural critics share an attachment to ideology and the distrust of physical experience. Marxist theory has influenced environmental history, often by ignoring natural science. Okay, so it says here that ang kultura, ang kritiko sa kultura ay may pagkakaugnay sa ideology. And ecocriticism, instead of taxing science for its use of language to represent, examines its ability to point more developed in Asian than European language. This locates entities in space, time, and social text. Okay, so ecocriticism. Okay, it says here that sa halip na buwisa ng agham or it is designs para sa paggamit nito ng wika upang kumatawan. Halimbawa, ang kakayahang tumuro. Okay, so when it comes sa pagtuturo ng wika ay mas it comes sa pagtuturo ng wika, Asian was the more developed than European language. Okay, so ang Dexis ay naglalagay ng mga ng entidad sa espasyo, oras at kontekstong panlipunan. Lewis Thomas, the core of life is language, which he sees as both mechanical, organic, and the principal way we transfer energy. Okay, si Lewis Thomas he is the core. Okay, so he is the core of life of language. Lewis Thomas was the core of life. Okay, so for Lewis Thomas, the core of life is the language. So, agreed. Because kung wala yung salita or languages, like for example right now, na nagre-report ako dito, useless lang din kung wala akong masasabi ng words or languages. So, I agreed with Lewis Thomas. Okay, so, Edward O. Wilson, firmly committed to science writing, also holds that poetry makes science convergent in what they might eventually discuss about human nature. Okay, so si Edward Wilson is isa siyang manunulat. At ayon rin sa paniniwala niya na ang mga tula ay gumagawa ng ang mga tula na ginagawa niya ay nagkakaugnay rin ito about sa kalikasan ng tao. And that is what Edward Wilson believes. And he holds that poetry makes sense. Okay, so gumagawa rin siya ng mga poetry about science. Okay, so ecocritics may detect more parity between literary and scientific writing than other postmodernists, but the view is not eccentric or unprecedented. Okay, so it says here that ang mga ecocritics ay maaaring makakita ng higit na pagkakapantay-pantay sa pagitan ng literatura at siyentipikong pagsusulat kaysa sa iba pang modernist. Ngunit ang pananaw na iyon ay hindi pa lang nagagawa.
Ecocriticism as interdisciplinary, having outlined a theory and history of ecocritical principles, reading across several disciplines of evolutionary biology and landscape architecture to environmental history and ethics. It's come to see that ecocriticism is evolving closely because its authors share nonsense of canon. Often they use similar rubrics such as landscape, place, region, urban, rural, nature, and environment. But since disciplinary basis remains strong, these studies really cross-fertilize. Some example of a strong interdisciplinary analysis. Number 1, nature science. A fine guide to a natural history is Peter Ward, Face of North America, the Nature History of a Continent, which describe the diversity of landscapes from coast to desert and how they are shaped by land, water, plant, animal processes. A good collection of natural history ideas and writing is William Bibb, The Book of Naturalists, an anthology of the best natural history. Number 2, geography. Geography has emerged in recent years as a dynamic field that spans natural and social science. A leading college text is James Brown and Arthur C. Gibson. Biogeography, which explains how geological and ecological processes create the geographical distribution of plants and animals.
Social sciences. An important early work on the socio-political aspects of place is Emma Bell Miles, Spirit of the Mountains, Knoxville University of Tennessee Press 1975, a bicultural study, first published in 1905. History. Intellectual history maps the progress of ideas, often independent of natural or social evidence. An early example is Clarence J. Glocken, Traces on the Rhodian Shore, Literature and Culture in Western Thought, from ancient times to the end of the 5th century. Berkeley, University of California Press 1967.
American Studies. American Studies scholars work between disciplines and so often examine issues of placement as they affect regions and peoples. A significant work on native space is David Morey. Forked Tongues, Literature and Media. Work in literature has been quite mixed, often owing to its lack of interdisciplinary content. An example is Gillian Tyndall. Countries of the Mind, The Meaning of Place to Writers. London Hogarth Press 1991, which is concerned not with actual but imagined landscapes, on the grounds that traders may thus see their own places without reference to the originals.